It was in 2019 that I died. It is when I had received my nephew that was 12 years old. I did not know that he was a witch and that he came to visit me because he was sent to destroy me. I did not know his spiritual condition. It is better to know the spiritual condition of people that we receive. My nephew insisted to sleep at our place in order to go back the following day. When my wife learned that he was leaving the following day, she got angry and said, "He is not gonna sleep with us, he must go back." I said to her, "We have 3 of your relatives that live with us, why are you chasing away my nephew?" I did not know that my wife was animated by the Spirit of God, and I rebuked and shouted at her. On that day we both went to bed in anger, yet the Bible is categorically, it was thanks to anger and aggravation between me and my wife that my nephew the witch captured my soul. In the morning I was walking the street heading to the field when I began to hear the voice of the Spirit of God bothering me and telling me to enter the church that was right in the street. I ignored this voice and continued to walk toward the bus stop, but then I heard the voice of God again in my heart convincing me to enter the church. Still I continued to resist. After I had passed the church I heard the Spirit of God bothering me to enter the church. Finally I turned back and went to the church. I attended this service. And then I took my bus that headed to the field. When I got there I was welcomed by my colleague David and his wife and friend, and we sat to talk about the field. 5 minutes later I began to experience paranormal phenomena. I look at a distance of 30 meters and I saw a shadow of darkness covering the land. When I wanted to speak to my colleague about what I was seeing, I realized that my mouth was shut for I could not open my mouth. I kept watching the dark shadow unable to tell my friends what I was seeing. I saw this dark shadow rising in the altitude and moving towards me. In truth this dark shadow was my nephew that was operating witchcraft power and hiding his identity. When he came to me I felt like I was hit on the back of the neck with stick. I screamed and fell to the ground. My friends rushed to pull my body from the ground, and they checked the pulse that was not there anymore, for I had died, because of the hit by a weapon of witchcraft. I heard the people in my surrounding as if they were far, and they were complaining, "What are we gonna tell his wife? How come a friend of us that came to visit us fall dead just like that?" Brethren, when I was still in coma I began to experience death, and how the spirit part from the body. I heard noises similar to a structure that is being dismantled, like the screws that maintain the spirit inside the body was opening, and my spirit was leaving my body. Suddenly I had become too far. I left my body, and stood 3 meters away observing my corpse. I realized that I was naked. People were crying but I could not speak to them. 5 minutes later a road appeared before me. There was a bush on both sides of the road. I left my corpse behind me and began to walk on the road of the deads. I noticed that when I began to walk on the road of the dead my steps changed, for I was moving with step like zombies in the movie. Immediately I began to see the deads from all over the world joining me in the road. These people that had died all over the world were men and women, old and young, even children. They were people of all nation and all race. They joined the road from left and right. The moment they joined this road their steps changed and they walked like the living dead, for wide is the gate and broad and easy to travel is the path that leads the way to destruction and eternal loss. To my surprise I saw my nephew in the road of the dead. He was holding the stick with which he killed me, and he was walking normally different from the deads. Minutes later I saw him leaving the road of the dead, and entering the bush on the side of the road. At that moment I heard the voice of the Spirit of God saying to me, "Marcel, follow your nephew to the bush." I was unable to leave the road of the dead, and when I looked inside the bush I saw my nephew heading to my mother village. In the physical he has never gone there before and does not know that village, but I saw him placing the stick with which he had killed on the ground. To my surprise I saw my uncle who was also a great witch welcoming him. In fact my mother was born in a family of 4 but she was killed with her 2 sisters by my uncle the great witch. I saw my uncle asking my nephew, "Meshach, have you killed him?" And my nephew replied, "Absolutely, I have killed him." My uncle asked him, "How did really you kill him?" My nephew replied, "Yes, I have killed him thanks to this weapon." I saw my nephew calling the stick with which he killed me a weapon. My uncle took the stick and lifted it high and he saw my blood on the stick. This was a confirmation that I was reached. Then he summoned the witches of 3 villages that came to celebrate my death. these witches ask my uncle, has he killed him? My uncle replied, of course, he has surely killed. Then he entered a house and came out with calabash containing human blood that they all share. They lifted my nephew in sign of victory and they all began to dance macabre dance. After witnessing this gathering of witches, I returned to the road of the dead and continue my journey. I began to sense that we were in the limit of the material world, for in the sky it was written terminus. Finally we reached a point where we were no longer moving, for the road ended. At that place I saw two tall and giant angels that landed. They were massive and they were holding harp. I saw a building in which were two angels of judgment. I saw people leaving the queue before us and entering the building to watch the movies of their life from birth till death. They watched the good and evil they did on the land. After watching the film of their life, the deads were not coming out, for they were disappearing, for they were going to their final destination, either to heaven and hell. When it was my turn, I was called to enter the building, and the angel showed me the movie of my life on a plasma TV. When the film of my life began, I saw the maternity where I was born, and I saw my mother carrying me after she had delivered me. I saw how she went home and I watched my development and time spent in primary school. Everything that I did, whether good or bad, was broadcasted on the screen. I saw how I became an adult. Then I watched the gathering of witches and their plot and conspiracy to sacrifice me and consume my flesh. I saw when my nephew hit me on the neck with his stick and I died. The movie of my life ended. Then an angel asked me, Mr. Marcel, between the good and the bad you did on the earth, what do you think you did the most? I said I did more good than evil. The angel told me, all right, you are going to the right direction, leading to the court of the celestial world for the confirmation of our verdict. For this court is not a celestial court. I saw 3 men and a young girl that were sent to the left direction, the abode of the dead, but the road in the middle led directly to the kingdom of God without celestial judgment. When I took the right way leading to the court of heaven, on the way I saw of angels of judgment. I saw how angels were grabbing people that were condemned in the court in order to throw them in the sea of fire of hell. When I saw the flames of hell, I feared God and decided to abandon sins. This fire was something you will never see on the land. Every time I remember that fire, I walk in the fear of the Lord, doing good. Whenever people arrived from the left direction, the angels were grabbing them and running with him to the edge of the valley of hell. The flames of hell was roaring and ringing the bell to indicate that a new soul was cast in the fire, and when these damned souls were cast in the fire, they were drowning and falling beneath the sea of fire up to the floor where the coal of hell was burning. As a result, these people became skeletal and bones. Then they rose to the surface of the flame of hell, uttering great screams. There were numerous people in skeletal form in this hellfire, screaming for help, but it was too late. They are damned in that place in order to cast into the lake of fire and brimstone. The whole thing was unreal. I don't know where these angels were coming from. Whenever people were received their verdict of condemnation, 4 angels were showing up and holding the man on both hands, and they led him to the edge of the valley and threw him in the fire, and they could heard a sound of an alarm. I continued the journey in the road of the dead and finally arrived before a house at the border of heaven. We were in the queue when 5 of us were called to enter for judgment. When it was my turn, I got in. A screen was opened. I saw the movie of my life, starting with the scene of maternity where I was born, and all my life was shown until my killing by witches. Then the angel told me, Mr. Marcel, your judgment is finished. You must walk in this road before you. After a kilometer you would find yourself in the kingdom of God. I was heading to the kingdom of God when I heard the voice of my mother. She appeared to me and told me, Marcel, I left you in the world to take care of your brothers and sister. It is not your time. I saw my mother grabbing my hand and making me turn around. He said, go back to the world in the name of Jesus Christ. That's when I began to leave the world of the dead.